The Siege of Mandalore is over now, and I wanted to discuss some of the differences or contradictions or retcons or whatever you want to call them between these episodes and the book Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. I've had a ton of people ask if these episodes mean the book no longer quote-unquote counts, and I think that's a ridiculous thing to say. Of course it still counts. Some details may have been changed, but they're details, minutiae, trivia. The spirit of the book and 95% of the details in it are still sound. The colors of Ahsoka's lightsabers in the book's flashbacks don't change what the book means or how the events of the story affect the character. There are two interludes in the book that give us details on the Siege of Mandalore. The very first pages talk about Ahsoka's final moments with Anakin and her duel with Maul. The Anakin stuff is largely the same. He brings her lightsabers back, provides some advice, and leaves. The dialogue is pretty different, but again, the spirit of the scene is the same. One final good memory for the two characters, and the last time they see each other until Star Wars Rebels. The duel with Maul is very different. They don't actually fight. She uses his anger to lure him into a trap, and he's captured. It's much more simple, but there are still some parts of their conversation that are reminiscent of the final version. Maul finds some of that common ground between the two characters, both as apprentices who were cast aside. The next interlude covers the aftermath of Order 66 and the False Grave. It's more about faking her and Rex's deaths so they can hide in the Outer Rim. The final scene of the show is much more about honoring the fallen clones who had their free will and identity stripped away. Ahsoka's lightsabers are again mentioned as being green, and she leaves them more purposefully as proof of her death. But one interesting note is that she mentions having a chance to kill Maul, but she chose to save Rex instead. That does kind of happen in the final episode, where she has a chance to stop his shuttle from leaving, but chooses instead to save Rex. So yeah, there are undoubtedly some things that don't line up between the book that was written 4 years ago and the final version of the Siege of Mandalore. What I imagine happened was Dave Filoni or someone gave E.K. Johnston a very broad strokes telling of the end of the series. Ahsoka sees Anakin one last time, gets her lightsabers back, and heads to Mandalore to capture Maul alongside Bo-Katan. They are successful, but when Order 66 is issued, Rex fights alongside Ahsoka and she saves his life, allowing Maul to escape. They also survive the encounter and fake their deaths. All of that is true in both the book and the show. So her lightsabers are blue now, and how Maul was captured is different. Those are the two biggest changes, and to me, it's just not that big of a deal. The interludes of the book were written so we had something when we had nothing. If you're gonna reread it, it's not hard to just replace the green lightsabers with blue in your head, or to swap out Maul's dialogue with the much more compelling version from the show. Dave Filoni made some improvements to his own story and made things better in my opinion. I don't think he should be shackled to what Johnston wrote when it's his story to wrap up, and that's not meant to be any kind of knock against E.K. Johnston. I'm sure she was just being as faithful as she could to what she was told, but the book is not about the Siege of Mandalore. It's about what Ahsoka did afterwards, and these episodes don't contradict any of that story, and they certainly don't make her experiences any less meaningful. Something I haven't brought up yet is Ahsoka's reasoning behind choosing the name Fulcrum in the book. That was originally the first time she used the code name, and she chose it for herself, not as a continuation of a code name that Saw Gerrera used first. Again, it's not a significant part of the book or the point of the story or anything. I'll admit this one baffles me a little bit more because its inclusion in the show seems like it's adding confusion for no real story reason, but maybe we'll learn more about it in the future, maybe in the Cassian Andor series. I totally agree that it would be nice if every little detail in Star Wars lined up. It makes everything feel like a real universe. But it's not a real universe, and creating a perfect universe isn't what Star Wars is about. It's a nice little bonus when it happens, but George Lucas didn't create Star Wars for people to make Easter egg videos. The obsession over what is and isn't canon can get in the way of actually appreciating Star Wars for its intended purpose. And I would never tell someone that enjoying Star Wars for the details is wrong, because I love the details. I love it when everything lines up. But the flip side of that is to not get too attached to that idea, because this isn't the first time something like this has happened, and I can almost promise you that it won't be the last. I've basically just decided that I will love it when the little details and connections work out, but I'll also accept it and move on when something has changed. For the most part, they won't affect anything anyway. Story, theme, and characters should come first, always.
The only change I can actually think of that I have a real problem with in Star Wars is Greedo shooting first, because I do think it changes Han's character arc for A New Hope, but I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Anyway, those are my thoughts on the changes between the Ahsoka book and the Siege of Mandalore. Next time I reread it, I'll have to make some small mental changes in my head, and that's fine. If you disagree with me, that's also fine. I'm not trying to tell anyone how to enjoy their fandom, but I also don't think it's fair to E.K. Johnston to have people asking if her book still counts because of some alterations that are very minor in the grand scheme of things. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.